Well, good afternoon, you lovely lot. If you could just let me know if you can see and hear and everything sounds okay and everything looks okay, that'd be fantastic. Just let me have a little note in the comment section. That'd be fantastic. I'm going to assume that everything is okay. So I'm really excited today because I've got a friend of mine who we've been talking for probably the last 18 months or so. We've talked quite a lot about various different things to do with WordPress and email and sort of e-commerce and things along those lines, along with lots of other things that we probably won't talk about today in this live stream. But I'm really excited to have Simon Harper in today, who's a good friend of mine and someone that I think is very, very good when it comes to dealing with email marketing, very hot on e-commerce, and a genuinely nice person. So, Simon, how are we doing today, sir?
That's some intro. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be here. I think I've already said to you that my nose has been running away with me and I have razor blades in my throat, but some strepsils and we are surviving. How are you?
I'm very, very good. Very good. I know the feeling. I've sort of been dealing with it myself the last couple of weeks. So thankfully the last couple of days seems a little bit better. So the whole Barry White thing, as we talked about earlier on, is a real thing. It's a real thing we have to deal with.
It is.
But for anybody that may not know you, Simon, would you like to do the quick TLDR sort of elevator pitch of who you are and your background?
Sure. This is easy because I hate talking about myself. I've been running my own company now, or just company of one, for almost 17 years now. So I started out with just specializing in WordPress and sort of email marketing, and now I've moved into niching down a little bit further with email marketing, WooCommerce and Shopify. I still do some technical SEO stuff, which AI hasn't come for quite yet in terms of the technical side, but yeah, that's me.
Nice. Now, some people have said you're a little bit quiet, so I've just turned the volume up on my side of things.
Okay.
So if you could let me know, if everybody could let me know if Simon is a little bit better now, if his voice is a little bit higher.
I can go a little bit closer, but not higher.
See, now you're getting the infamous radio voice going on. You know, we can sort of, so today, what are we talking about? So if you could let me know in the sort of comments if Simon is a little bit better now, if we've got the levels boosted up a little bit. Right. There's always a little bit of a delay here. So I'm saying if you got any ability to boost a bit more, that might be useful.
Simon's voice is not audible at all. No worries. Let me see. I will try and boost that on my side.
See if we'll peek out now. So always one of those difficult things is to kind of get the levels the same when you have no control over each other's volume. So
yeah, no, I'm at full volume. How's that going now?
Well, you're a little bit louder now from my side of things. So can everybody let me know if this is a little bit better now, if we got those levels a little bit better? That would be absolutely awesome. So Simon, let's get you talking. So let's start off with some email marketing side of things. I mean, that's one of the key areas that I know you specialize in. You've got a couple of email newsletters that you put out every single week, which you do feature me in quite a few times. So I do appreciate that. The check is in the post, as they say. But you work with clients with email marketing. Am I right on that?
Yeah, so as well as running my own newsletters, I work with the clients, and they will range from B2B to B2C and e-commerce, but a lot of that stuff will be, kind of e-commerce focused. And then I'm technically platform agnostic, but I mostly work with Klaviyo and Beehive and MailChimp, but I can work in anything.
Cool. So I'm going to ask you a question now then, because I know that there's a lot of people, when I sort of posted this up probably last week or week before, were saying that one of the key things that they struggle with, and I would include myself in this, is email marketing. It's not the easiest thing in the world to get your head around. So where you've worked with clients, and I'm sure any advice you kind of give you would be gold for all of us, is what's the biggest mistake you see small business owners actually making when it comes to email marketing if they're doing it?
Yeah, well, there's I'm going to go for two, and one has been the biggest change over the last year, which has been deliverability. So it's actually getting into the inbox. So we've had the likes of Yahoo and Gmail and Microsoft actually setting very strict guidelines on how to actually get your emails in there. But then the biggest thing is being consistent. So a lot of people will maybe send emails for a little time and then they'll stop. And that then is actually hurting your deliverability and your ability to get into the inbox. And whenever you do go to do those, Black Friday, Cyber Monday things, as everybody will now be jumping onto, chances are you're going to land up in spam rather than actually getting your offers out there. But it is just that mostly thing about understanding that technical setup right, getting those foundations, and then being consistent in your messaging.
Yeah, I think again that's probably one of the key areas that I think I probably struggle with is I think a lot of people just struggle with what to say. What do I put out there in emails? Some people kind of feel like, am I going too many times? Am I sending too much out? Am I not sending enough out? So, I mean, what would you consider realistically to be the optimal quantity of emails? I mean, if you look at something like Amazon, for example, I mean, they're sending emails out every single day. It obviously works for them, but your average business, your SME, those kinds of things, what would you say is like the optimal level of sending content out?
I love that you're putting me on the spot, but I'm not going to do the it depends, because obviously there is a it depends, but it's more than that. It's about, because there's so much noise in the inbox, and obviously that's then a hard thing. So if you're maybe only sending one email a month, it's going to be very hard for you to remotely break into that inbox. So I think a general starting place for a lot of businesses that aren't even necessarily e-commerce would be, at least once a week. I know that sounds like a lot to some people, but it's actually in reality not at all, because as I'm sure you know, and I'm sure there's some brands in your inbox, particularly if products or services that you like, you could be getting an email a day. Mm-hmm. And certainly an awful lot more at this time of year.
Yeah, I think when it comes to, your Black Friday, your typical kind of sales times like Christmas and holidays and things along those lines, yes, it does ramp up exponentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what's your experience from, I'm sure you've done A/B testing and things with your own kind of content. Do you find maybe a longer format email once per week is receive a better open rate maybe than a couple of smaller emails?
Well, again, that depends on kind of what your existing relationship kind of is with your audience or your target market. So for example, I'm very well known for writing very long form emails all the time. Like I'm regularly coming in at, 1,200 words. Whereas, for a lot of people, that's like, I'm just not reading that. So I think certainly whenever you're starting out, and because the inbox is so competitive, and now we have all these AI inboxes that summarize things, if you want to start out, keep it short and sweet, go somewhere for, 300, 500 words and have your structured headings and everything set out. A lot of it is actually in some ways to do with, if anybody hears, which I'm sure the audience is familiar with web design, having your H1s, your H2s, H3s, and having those messages in there. I think if you're wanting to sell or push something, you need to keep it concise, have one main CTA and one sort of focal message of the email. And if you have more than that, then in general, send another email. Now, again, it depends, but, there you go.
Yeah, I think, everything we're going to kind of talk about today is going to be a generalization. There's always going to be fringe cases. There's all those kinds of things. But kind of what I'm getting here is that you need to nurture your email list to get 100%. Them used to receiving, to get them the fact that, if you send an email out that's 1,500 words on a Monday and then a month later you send one on a Wednesday with 300 words, you're not going to get that recognition and the negative kind of connotations that come with that, the lack of recognition from the recipient, as well as the potential to not actually even end up in their inbox, just end up in their spam, all kind of raise up.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's one of those things where people notice when you're not there rather than you are there. So if you're regularly sending and all of a sudden you haven't sent for a few weeks, people are like, oh, where did they go? Are they still in business? What's happening? What's going on? And even if you struggle to come up with something consistent that is directly to your product, you can do things like Dave Foy's very good at this with Foy's Fridays, where he does his 5 tips. And some of them are related to what he does and some of them aren't. But then that keeps his list and everything going. So whenever he does the pre-launches for his courses and things like that there, then everybody's like, oh, great, an email from Dave, and they're ready. Yeah,
so it is about building that. It's the same with anything, I think, with any kind of, when it comes to SEO, when it comes to, building communities, nurturing things in Facebook or whatever it is about that showing up, being there consistently, getting people used to the routine. Like with YouTube, for example, if you put out videos, you don't put out a video traditionally on a Monday and a Friday, which are not the best days, but you generally put your content out Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. People become used to that, and it does have a beneficial effect. But what I'm trying to take away is consistency is key.
Yeah, and I think what you kind of said earlier on there, it's important to constantly test and A/B test. So, for example, the newsletter that I send out on a Monday about email marketing goes out sometime, because basically I have a graph in Beehive that shows me my optimal send times and open times and things. So I'll send that out, anytime between 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. But on a Wednesday for my WordPress WooCommerce newsletter, it actually goes out at 12, a whole hour before, because that's whenever those on. And again, I will experiment from time to time looking at holidays of adjusting those even by 15-20 minute window to see if anything changes. So the email marketing one didn't change at all, but in the last 4 months actually, sorry, the WordPress one has changed, because it also used to go out around 2 o'clock, but now I've brought it forward by 2 full hours. So there you go.
So quick question then, if I'm assuming that, like, with, for example, because of your newsletters you send out, you have a global audience. Do you schedule it so it goes out UK time to everybody, or are you actually sending it out so it goes out their local time? So you hit them, like, for example, when they're on their lunch break, which is traditionally maybe the time that they would expect to see it and expect it in their inbox and read it? Or do you just kind of send them out 12 p.m., for example, UK time, regardless of where the audience actually is?
So if I wanted it to be super awesome and do what I teach, then yes, I could send out, multiple segments at optimized times, or, delayed sending for each of those time zones. I don't. What I do is that optimal time I have is for my core list, and it actually works out quite nicely for pretty much everyone, because most of my audience would be UK and US based, and there's a few others scattered around. So the West Coast is a little bit more difficult, but it's pretty much hitting us at our lunchtime in the UK and Ireland, and then it's hitting the East Coast at the start of the day, and then Central Time's not too bad either. So it works out quite well. But yes, if you wanted to be hyper personalized, particularly at this time of year, and you wanted to maximize your open rates and your click rates and everything like that there, then you would look at your send times and batch everybody together and send the same email out in different sets at optimized times.
Yeah, as with all these things, it kind of comes down to the content you're actually putting out there. I mean, what you do with your email lists, they're informative. They're not. There's something someone would sit down and actually read the articles that are in there, as opposed to being time sensitive in a lot of use cases. So again, I think that the whole takeaway that I think anybody that's listening to this, either now or on the replay, is that there's no one size fits all.
No,
it's as I say to my partner when it comes to the different things that she's doing with social media and things like that. It's a case of you test it, you track it, you refine it, you repeat. It's a case of that's what you have to do. What works, you focus your efforts on that. If it doesn't work, you change it. You try alternatives and see what works. So, in some instances, having the email sent out at the relevant time based upon the time zone makes sense. Other times, like you say, you're hitting them first thing in the morning because that's what a big chunk of your audience is.
Yeah.
Or the lunchtime kind of thing in the UK where that part of your audience is.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think when you're talking about then how you're tying that in with other sort of services, so most of my opens will happen in the first 36 hours. I know that. So I'll then the next day, about halfway through the day, I will then do my top 3 links, from each post, and start the cycle again of promoting that email, and then I can generate social media stuff out of that as well. So it's all the 2 newsletters, they're timed. So Monday runs right through to Wednesday, and then Wednesday runs right through to Friday, and then I can do whatever I want, at the weekend. So the 2 newsletters are getting equal focus on social media, and then through replies directly in the inbox or any recycled things that I can do with them, rather than, for me personally, I want to try and grow them both together equally. But we'll see. You have to be ready to, if there's a wee surge, like you have to be reactive and ready to go with that.
Yeah, for sure. So that kind of leads me on to the next thing, and this is something that I know for me personally that I'm never 100% which way to kind of go with this, and that's your HTML newsletter email versus your plain text. Now, would I be correct in saying that there is still a slightly better chance of actually getting through spam filters and so on when it comes to going text only? Or do you find there's not really much of a difference between the two? Because, I mean, as a designer, I want to make my emails all look really pretty with nice graphics and nice styling and so on within the confines of what you can do with email. but then my brain says that reduces the fact or the chances of actually getting through, and therefore you undermine the effort you're putting in the first place.
Yeah, and sorry, I'm just laughing in the comments at Steve and my true Celtic hat. I'm a very proud Atlanta Falcons fan. There's no Irish links there at all, but yeah, the thing with it is a lot of people actually confuse what real plain text emails are. So a lot of people will maybe send, a very stripped down email and they'll have no design, nothing in it, and they go, oh, it's plain text. And it's like, well, no, it's actually an HTML email still. So true plain text is, very, there's two things with it. One, so for example, say you're using MailChimp. Whenever you're sending MailChimp emails, there's a little checkbox you can send whereby you send an HTML version and you send a plain text version, so two versions of the email are sent. And that then anybody who has accessibility needs will most likely have the plain text version, and then they can digest it and see what's going on much better than what you can often do with an HTML based email, particularly whenever you're around one of these ESPs, because they're not going to be very accessible because drag and drop email builders aren't. Some are better than others, but that's kind of why plain text will kind of exist. But also, as we've seen before, those emails from the CEO, which are, those plain text emails that land, they can be quite dramatic whenever you're always like, oh, what's this? And it can catch attention. So there are definitely benefits to it. And sometimes I'll do those faux kind of plain text, but it is just stripped back HTML. But if your ESP, whoever you're using, to send those emails gives you that option, by all means try it out because they work.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe my designer now goes, now I can make them look prettier than I did before. Okay. So, one of the key things when it comes to email marketing is segmentation and tagging your email lists. It's one of those things that I think when you are new to doing it, it's very easy to get lost in tagging and segmentation when you don't actually need it and having multiple lists. And I know for myself where I've kind of changed over the platforms that I'm using, I've really stripped it back to really simple. It's a single list with a generic catch-all for a subscriber, but then inside there, if someone buys a course, they'll get tagged with that course. If they do something else, they'll get tagged with that, but all still sits and resides in one single list. How do you approach the whole segmentation side of things? Do you keep it as simple and clean as possible, or do you kind of go down and subscribe to that route of having it segmented to the nth degree?
For me personally, it's very similar to yourself. It's kind of one list to rule them all, and then I have some segmentation set up within there, but it's not complicated because this is one of the biggest things I see, particularly if you go into, now it's not Klaviyo's fault, it's because they're often associated, with very much e-commerce accounts, but you go in and it's a horror show. There are so many segments, nobody has any idea what they do, and how many conflict or how many send together. The more segments you add, the more complicated things become, particularly if you haven't documented your process. I think that there's nothing wrong with segmentation at all. In fact, obviously, I would encourage it, but it's keeping it simple and not overcomplicating it. And some of the ways you can do that, obviously, is have slightly more complicated segments themselves, segments with, 4 or 5 different branches. But even then, people can get carried away. So maybe sometimes it is actually a better use case just to have 2 or 3 very simple segments. Like I only have 8 in Beehive, I think. 8 standard segments in there, mixture of static and dynamic. So static would be ones that don't change unless I manually make a change. Dynamic will obviously be monitoring what's going on within Beehive and adjust my contacts accordingly. And then I'll have some automation set up, which in Beehive are separate to segments there. They're kind of their own thing. But Klaviyo would be the same, MailChimp, and their, can't remember what it's called now. It's not called a customer journey builder, but there is this way now where a lot of ESPs will give you sort of pre-built flows, pre-built segments to kind of get you started. And if you don't know much about segmentation, that is a great place to go from, because they'll pick the most popular ones and they're ready set up and ready to go. And that's a good way to get started.
Yeah, I think segmentation, for anybody that's kind of starting out now, that's looking to build their email list, I would say keep it simple. Start with a single list. We're setting my partner up with her setup. And for me, I use Fluent CRM. which obviously ties into the Fluent suite for like Fluent Community and those kinds of things. So for me, it's like the whole ecosystem. And I have used MailChimp in the past, and MailerLite was one I used for probably 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot in the way that they worked. And once you kind of get into automation, that's where the segmentation comes in super handy.
Yeah.
Because like, let me give you an example that if someone signs up for anything on the community, for example, they're tagged as a subscriber. So they get added to the single subscriber list. But then if they purchase a course, they're tagged with that course on the subscriber list. If they buy another course or they take up a subscription, they're tagged with those relevant things. And then if they stop becoming a community member, they will be untagged from that. So it's good to take advantage, I think, of thinking about how you would want to use this in conjunction with automation, because automation is kind of the key, I think, when it comes to email marketing and connecting that up to various other platforms, your WordPress website, maybe your e-commerce platform, whether you're using something like WooCommerce, Fluent Cart, or, sort of Shopify. With the ability to be able to connect all these platforms together, don't underestimate how useful that tagging is inside your email software or your email marketing platform to be able to take advantage of those. But like I say, like you would with a website, you don't just sit down and start chucking pages onto your screen. You start with a plan of, right, I need a home page, I need a contact page, I need an about page, I need a services page, for example. So you go into that with an organization in mind, your structure's there. And I would say that's exactly the same thing to do when you're looking at email marketing. When you're building your email list, think about it before you start creating it, because otherwise it gets out of hand super quickly. And I've lived that dream multiple times and really wished I could start again, and have started again. And it's a lot of work.
It is, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there with tags, and they're pretty much available in all major platforms. They're so powerful because if you aren't really sure quite yet what you're going to do with your segments and your automation, at least have people tagged so that you can in the future, if not concurrently, interact with them. Tags are amazing. They're really, really good.
They are indeed. Now, speaking of automation, right, in your experience, okay, if you had to delete every single automation that you run, but one, just one, what would that one be that you would keep? What would be the one you think, I just could not live without that particular automation?
Sorry, I was having a deep think there. Not just because my office is in the garden and I am surrounded by squirrels and you can't hear them. They're running all over my office and they're all over my windows at the moment. It is lunchtime, I guess, for them. But I think in general, no matter what sort of industry you're in, the most engagement you're going to get is in your welcome sequence. You're going to get your most opens and your most clicks. So if you really have to cut me down to just one, it will be that one. You have to have that one for sure.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. That is definitely an incredibly important one, and one that, and again, I think as you said there, which you haven't kind of talked, is sequences, because it's very easy to think of email marketing as being, I have to manually send out content every day, week, month, whatever it is you're going to do. But I'm only going to use my own experiences in this, and I'm sure yours is way more broad than mine. But like, for example, when someone signs up to the community, the WP Test community, there's a 3 email sequence. The first one is welcoming them. The second one, which goes out like 2 days later, is this is how the community works. Yeah. And then the third one is, I can't remember what the third one is off the top of my head, but it's like, sorry, yeah, Imran,
I saw that too.
I do apologize, but once you kind of, because you can do repetitive things, having those sequences in place is incredibly useful. And again, to tie into the automation, once someone's completed a sequence, you can then tag them into something else depending upon what they've done. And I think this is where automation really comes in super powerful, is where you can trace the journey that someone's got and what they're doing inside your email sequences, and then do other things based upon it. Make intelligent decisions by using this automation. I love automation, and I know that we've talked about this in the past.
Yeah.
Automation just opens up so many options. Even if you just limit it to only email marketing, it just opens up so many options to customize how things work.
It's huge. And I think, one of the biggest sort of mistakes that I see with those welcome sequences is that people forget that they're not necessarily evergreen. they're seasonal. So for example, you should be updating your welcome sequence with different content. Maybe you're wanting to direct them to a particular product or service at a different time of the year because you don't know when people are entering, or you want to update them with your 3 most popular blog posts recently or something along those lines. I mean, if you're really just scraping by with the skin of your teeth and doing 50 different hats, then fine. But really, you should be monitoring your sequences and your automations to see how can I improve it, what can I do here, because I can guarantee you that if you just leave it and sit there, it's not going to be performing as well as you could. And as you say, if you have all these wonderful automations that are doing a lot of work for you, then you should have more time to tweak them.
In a perfect world, otherwise we just sort of tend to fill our time with other things that we
procrastinating.
Procrastinating. Yeah, we'll check that in the dictionary. Okay, so let's talk about AI, because we can't exactly ignore that. So what are your thoughts and feelings when it comes to using AI for creating email content? Now, I'm going to put this in 2 different ways.
Ooh.
And mainly, I'll explain the second way in a moment. The first way is just literally using it to write your emails, whether it's email sequence or just emails in general. And the second one is where you use it. And the reason I say this one is because I released a video, I think 2 weeks ago, which is about connecting up, for example, a form, and it's a complaints form. And the complaints form has departments on it, the complaint title, etc., etc., etc. And that goes through ChatGPT, and based upon the prompt that I've given it, it will pull the data in from that and it will personalize the email. Now, I'm not suggesting in this example that you would replace the human being in the process. I'm talking about this would be the first part of the sequence, which basically says it's a bit more empathetic to the person complaining, as opposed to a generic, thank you very much for your email. We'll come back to you in 7 to 10 working days and we won't answer your question. You know, it's a bit more empathetic than that. So with those 2 different kind of takes on AI in mind, how do you feel about it? Is it a good thing, a sort of time saver, or is it a complete killer?
So let's take the second one first, because I remember that video very well, actually. But I think the second one, obviously, this has been one of the biggest things within the tech sector, is because we know for layoffs in terms of that specific example of support and all those kind of things. And I think to an extent, you know, within the WordPress ecospace, we have DocSpot, which is, I think it's Aaron Edwards. It's superb. And we have then within the kind of the email world, you can bring in those examples using the integrations with AI that, you know, you were talking about. And I think they have a place. Not necessarily a place for everybody to replace an actual person, but as you kind of said, and the purpose of that video was adding efficiencies to your workflow. And certainly, I mean, we're getting now where AIs are trained on our tone and our voices, and sometimes, you know, I am genuinely very impressed at what they come up with. Other times I'm like, that's not me at all. But then that's fine, because I have a base to go on and something to sort of iterate off. And I think building in those types of advanced automations and integrations are brilliant. So, I mean, we've got Klaviyo has an MCP, Bravo has an MCP, Omniscient, like they're all coming out with their own MCPs, whereby they're taking AI to a whole new level, and you're connecting them into, now there's, whenever you start connecting your ESP into an MCP, there's a whole world of Imran can listen out to this one, GDPR and various other things, you know, whenever you are sticking client data in there or whatever you're doing. If you're doing your own stuff, you know, fine, it's maybe slightly different. But, you know, you can tell Klaviyo to go off and work with Claude and build a segment, build a flow, and build me an email. The segments and flows are interesting. The emails are terrible. But again, this is the worst they're ever going to be. So these kind of solutions are there, and they're learning and they're getting better. The first one, in terms of creating content, I know there's a huge debate at the minute, so disclaimer, we're not talking about this, but I do use obviously AI to help me create images for my emails. It is a time saver for me, it is, and I think you can spot them a mile off, particularly with my usage, and that's fine, and I'm sort of very open about that and why I use them. In terms of writing content itself, I don't use it that much. Sometimes I will, and like the biggest extent is Grammarly, because my spelling, punctuation, and grammar is horrific. It was fine until I went to university, and then it actually just went down the tubes. But sometimes I will do the odd test, but I will let my readers know sort of afterwards and reveal what's going on. By the way, this section of the email was written by AI. Now that's with my audience, and they know I'm test things and I check things out. But it's up to you, I guess, how you use it and why you use it. But I think we're all in this sort of sphere, and then I will let you talk, of AI fatigue to an extent where people are getting very good at spotting where AI is and what it is, or maybe that doesn't sound quite right. And that's whenever, if you overuse AI and people start to, and you see people interacting very differently with your emails and things like that, then that's when you need to pay attention. But equally, you have businesses now that are spinning up. Now, I'm not for this at all. I stress this. I actually think it's horrible. But you do have entrepreneurs, and it works and it's fine. It's up to them, who are building out niche email newsletters. And I mean niche. There's an email farm here in the UK that does it. And they spin out completely AI-generated emails, flow sequences for any industry you can imagine. And it's just RSS blog posts that they recycle, but they're making a fortune and they're not doing anything. It's all set up and automated in AI, and away you go. But people know what they're getting. They know what they're signing up for. They're upfront about it. It's AI-generated newsletters, but it's about getting news out to people and information. So there's choices there from both the builder and the reader. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I think we are in that kind of like honeymoon stage with AI at the moment, where because it's cheap, and I've seen a couple of comments on this lately, and I can't disagree with them, is that most AI companies like ChatGPT, those kinds of things, they are literally burning through cash at an insane rate, and they're not making anywhere near the money back that they need to sustain that business model. So we are in a golden era, as it were, with what we have access to. And I think that's going to change. I think people are going to get burnt out. I think what we're seeing right now when it comes to AI, I think will die down in the next 18 to 24 months, and it will become much more, how can I say, streamlined, shall we say then. It's going to be a lot less in everything, because we've seen it with so many. Yeah, we've seen it with so many other technologies. It's now a case of, right, AI, we've got to stick AI in everything. It's in builders, it's in bloody everything. And in some instances it makes sense. In other instances it's absolute garbage.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing is, I think people are experimenting, companies are experimenting to see, where does it make sense? Where will people pay for it? And at some point, a lot of the usage that we're seeing, which is allowing these AI companies to kind of burn through that resource, that money that they're spending just to keep these things going, is going to reduce. And I think we are going to see the cream starting to rise to the top, as opposed to what we're seeing now, which is just everything being thrown at the wall, seeing what the hell sticks, and hoping for the best. You know, we've seen it in so many instances. There are lots of cases where AI has been shoehorned into something and it doesn't benefit. It doesn't make it better. If anything, it makes it exponentially worse. So I think we are in that infancy of AI and its usefulness. And I think people will, in much the same ways you've got things like Etsy, for example, and that's not what it used to be, but Etsy was originally meant to be, that's where the handmade human arts and crafts things can be sold.
Yeah.
And it bypasses that mass-produced plastic crap that is so prevalent. It's the throwaway thing. Is you buy it, you use it for 5 minutes, you throw it away.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to have the same kind of thing where people will very quickly really want the human element, the real element, not just the AI perfect worded element or graphic or whatever it is. And as you say, you can spot it a mile off. As Imran's already said, it's the overuse of the dashes and things along those lines. You can see it straight away. Very similar wording. And they will always I use AI to do things like take the transcriptions of my video and then create content from that. But it's using my words. And I've noticed that if you try to do a lot of different things, like you want to make it a tweet or something more succinct, it'll keep on trying to change the same things over and over again, using words that I would never speak like that. And
Yeah.
and it's forcing it. And I think people are going to get peed off with that. And like you say, we see these patterns, we see those things. So I think AI is going to peak at some point in the next 18 to 24 months. And then we're going to start to come down, and it's going to start to reduce its prevalence in everything.
100%. And, you know, both the big Sam Altman and NVIDIA have both spoken about this quite openly, because they know there's no hiding, even though they're taking all the investment they can in the meantime. But sure, what do you call it? With the separation off there with a little bit of OpenAI and their relationship with Microsoft, they went and spent, what, $57 million buying computing space from Amazon, because, you know, they need that. As you say, they're struggling to keep up as we all burn several forests and evaporate so much water, asking AI to do silly things. But, you know, it's just, as you say, it's finding the right use case. I mean, there's one of the big things that we're finding, you know, at the minute, for example, is with ChatGPT and their Atlas browser, that it's actually just a wrapper for Chrome. And we've found that now there's been a couple of things coming out of now how prompts are appearing in Google Search Console, and prompts can't appear unless it's Google data. So we know now it's Google's search engine powering Atlas, and there's various other little things coming out. And we have seen the likes of, you and I have discussed this before, with the likes of Atlas and Perplexities. Oh, I can't remember. Comet, all these silly names. Where if you're running your own website and you're happy and you're safe and secure, then you can do some very cool things with it in agent mode. But equally, you know, it's an absolute disaster waiting to happen for a client just dumping that in and go, hey, AI, go to town on my site. And obviously now we're seeing all the prompt injections and hidden code and things like that there. I think it's that classic Ian Malcolm thing from Jurassic Park. You know, we can do it, but should we do it?
Should we? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, if you look at the whole sort of AI browser that's the current thing to come out of the last couple of months, for me personally, I would never install one.
No, wild.
I mean, they've got enough information about us as it is already, and I don't know. I just don't think I would want to use that. In fact, I won't use that. But
I mean, it's even people understanding them. So no, it's not like, if you look at how the marketing is done around, for example, and I'm not having a go because they all do this, but the marketing of Atlas for turning on certain features to really get the full use out of it. Yeah, that sounds great, but when you actually look at the data and what you're doing and what you're sending over, if you had any client stuff connected up to that, you're so screwed. And I know there is there's a lot of Americans in here, so we have very different rules over here with GDPR and P2 data and everything. And I know there's a lot of rules that are tightening up over there too. But this is one of the biggest concerns, I think, whether it be in WordPress, whether it be in email marketing, e-commerce, wherever you are. People are just like, this is so awesome, this is making my business brilliant. And we're just handing over data to people that we're just like, and have no idea what's going on. None. And that could come back to bite you. So I think, you know, you're right. In the next 18 to 24 months to bring this back, we will see a streamline of services, you know, where we'll see a core set that we'll kind of all be using, and hopefully they'll have refined what is useful and what isn't by that point. But I think we're going to start seeing lawsuits as well.
Absolutely. You know, it doesn't take much for someone to get in hot water because of what they've done via AI, or vice versa. And as we've seen the copyright sort of law cases come out and things like court cases with regards to artwork and music and things like that. And that's only going to get worse. I mean, if you look at like, is it Suno? And you look on YouTube, I mean, I can't help it. I mean, some of these things are absolutely friggin' amazing. But they're doing like hair metal versions of like Tina Turner songs and sort of like, you know, you've got like AC/DC songs done in a 1970s jazz version, and they're brilliant, but it's still copyrighted information. It's copyrighted material that's being used. It might be repurposed, but it's still being used. And you only need one Metallica to come along and go, no. Yeah. We're going to have Napster on your ass. And sorry, the older people in the room will probably understand that one. Probably.
I know Napster. LimeWire and all those days. Wow.
Yeah, that's gonna happen. It's because it's the Wild West at the moment when it comes to AI. That until legislation gets put into place And the problem with it is, as with all these things, is one case will become high profile. It'll be extreme, and then we'll use that then, to set a precedent, and it will,
for everyone.
yeah, in the same as everything else, in the way that they, no government on this planet wants the internet to be open and free.
No.
And once you start to have AI and all those kinds of things, and copyright and all those kinds of issues that can arise, there are going to be companies that are going to be like the ones that are chasing the hearse, no win, no fee, and all that kind of stuff. There's just going to be some law companies going to come and set up a precedence, and they're going to go after someone like ChatGPT or Google or something along those lines, and it's going to change.
And I think that's something, again, we were kind of talking about earlier in terms of refinement and industry and changing. So we were talking about an SEO plugin earlier on that I had cancelled, and we were talking about another one I may sort of look at. But one of the biggest problems sort of within the SEO industry and these things is they are AI everything, particularly the WordPress plugins, and they're so bad. And they're also recommending, and I'm talking about this now, not from a technical SEO perspective, not from organic or paid keywords or anything, just from a technical. It's just rubbish. It's utter rubbish. And there was even a high-profile company there who had created this GEO AI tool, and then all of a sudden, and they've been commended for it in the community as well, of shutting it down. And basically, they said, "Look, do you know what? It kind of worked, and in fact, it did work. But actually, in matter of fact, we're just renaming and repackaging and remarketing something that is not real. It's something that we've always been doing, and this is only a filler." So we're shutting it down, and that's the thing. There is so much great potential for AI, for good and for bad.
For me, the downside is that companies seem to be shooting themselves in the foot just because they think they have to jump on the AI hype train. I mean, Google is a great example of this. Google is basically shooting themselves in the foot with their AI answers to every search. I mean, it was bad enough where your top results are all paid results, but now you've got right at the top, you've got the AI, then you've got the paid results, and then if you're lucky, you might appear somewhere down the page. Well, at what point are they going to realize that when nobody's creating new content and the only content that's available is AI, is going to become self-perpetuating, that the answers are going to be regurgitated AI answers based upon regurgitated AI answers? Where do they draw the line? You kind of think like, okay, you want to get in on AI and you're doing some cool things like with Nano Banana and stuff like that. Cool stuff. But you're also taking your core business model and you're saying, what we're going to do is we're just going to set fire to it, but we're going to pour the gasoline on there and we're going to chuck the match on as well. And we're going to watch it burn. Am I the only one that thinks it's a daft, it's self-perpetuating to undermine their own business model?
Give me those 10 blue links back. I think... that's the thing, like AI overviews are trash. AI mode is much better, to be fair. It's still not something that I would really necessarily use, and I'm probably showing my age there. I want my 10 blue links. But I think we're ready for sure at the point where what is the point, as you say, like I need a website. I need a website, but what's the point of me having a website if it's just going to get scraped and regurgitated? But Google needs actually for me to publish more so it can scrape and regurgitate it. And I suppose in some ways, to diverge ever so slightly, that's where I think in particular I'm quite different with my email marketing, because I'm not paywalled or gated, so I actually allow my stuff to be scraped. So the web versions of all my newsletters are there. There's an RSS, there's everything, and it's funny seeing the AI emails or integrations that are signed up to my newsletters that are actively building them into automations. I'm like, you don't have to do this. I mean, like, you can just take it if you want. But that's the thing. I think Google's always constant. Obviously, Google is the behemoth in the room, and I think that's one of the biggest things that we need to do in general, and there's discussions happening around this, whereby one of the ways that we combat that, controversial as this may be, but I don't think it is within the SEO community, is that we stop optimizing for Google. We should have done it years ago, not to completely ignore it, but we look at our other platforms. So we optimize for email marketing, we optimize for whatever social platforms that we are actually on, who are also like stupid AI chatbots into WhatsApp and Instagram. It's like, I just want to write my own message. I don't want you to write my message. Or as you and I are sort of exploring, and you're much further down the line with this, is building your own community, which is gated from AI and the kind of values in there. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest things in the next couple of years, as you're kind of saying, while we're in that bubble, is that there is a huge demand for people that are wanting human contact, human interaction, and that's where those communities are going to become so important. And AI will not be getting at those anytime soon, although they'll figure out a way. But
they will, yeah, they'll they'll sign up and become AI bots in there for sure. If you look at it, I mean, social media, for example, is good in certain respects. But I recorded a video this morning, and for some reason, no audio came out on my phone. And I'm flicking through, Facebook, right?
Yeah.
My Facebook feed, and I flicked through there for probably about 40 or 50 posts. Okay, there are only 2 posts in there from people that I know. All the rest are ads and links to groups and all manner of stuff that I have zero interest in whatsoever. So again, it goes back to that. How often do people doom scroll on something until they realize there's absolutely nothing on you for me? This is why platforms like Facebook and that are dying when it comes to younger people, the younger generation. They've got no interest in it because it's just full of advertising. And I think, like you say, if you have communities, for example, and once mine's kind of like ready to go fully, I want to push people over to that, and I will stop using Facebook anywhere near as much as I do.
Yeah.
Because it's nice to think the content that's in there is the content that we want to put in there. I don't have to scroll through a list of rubbish that makes no sense in an order that for some reason makes no sense to me. And something that I've found now, and I turned away and I come back, is completely gone off my threads, and I have no idea where it is to find it again. Go back to the days, and again, showing my age, I prefer a forum kind of setup, and that's what communities are. They're in... Yes, you can change it, but they're just generally in chronological order. If I posted that today, it's at the top. And if I post another thing today, it pushes it down. But I know where it's going to be.
And it's interesting, though, that you bring that up, because obviously one of the biggest changes in the inboxes with Google is their filter for show me not just the most recent, but the most relevant. So arguably, we still don't know yet exactly what way it works, but that was a potentially good use of AI, where it is scanning your interactions individually with your inbox and trying to surface the most relevant emails actually to you. So I'm like, I 100% get what you're saying, agree, and I remember PHP2B forum or whatever it was that we use for our self-hosting our forums.
Yeah.
But like that's a great use, you know, of AI and trying to make things a lot more relevant, and that's a really hard thing, sort of, for social media to do now, because it's not about relevancy, you know, it is about money and ads and things like that there. Now, in saying that, I haven't used Facebook in 8 years, you know, which is terrible. But it's the same on, you know, Instagram and all that kind of stuff. But it is about, as we've constantly said, there are those edge cases where the AI is useful, except Apple's inbox. It is, Apple's AI overviews in Apple Mail are horrendous. So they're not there yet.
Apple's AI isn't there yet. So.
No, it's just so bad. And I love Apple, but not the AI, not at all.
No, that is terrible. Okay, we've got a question here from Richard Mullin. So I want to it's a 2-part question, and I'm going to pop this over to you because I think you're probably the much better person to answer this than I am. So let's do part 1 first of all. So we've got, what do you suggest for a website that basically gets no traffic for 7 to 8 months of the year, then has 2 or 3 busy months and 1 mad month where traffic goes above 50,000 on event day, and very hard to keep an email list about 6,000 updated. It's a horse racing based sort of site. So we're talking obviously seasonal events and things. So as a sort of just a general idea for a site that is very seasonal, for example, how could you keep people engaged over the period of time where there really isn't that much going on? I mean, what would you... If they came to you and said, Simon, we want to pay you to do this for us, what would be your advice on the spot?
From a website perspective?
From an email marketing perspective.
Okay, sorry, from an email marketing perspective. Well, that's fair enough. make sure for sure that there's multiple sort of dedicated landing pages there within the niche topics on the website, the most popular pages for newsletter signups, not just having the newsletter in the footer. You can have pop-ups if you want. I'm not a massive fan of them, but unfortunately they do kind of work. Having an email CTA in your blog, if you don't have a blog, you should have a blog on it, because you should definitely be able to write blogs about horse racing. And there's so many different topics, you could have within there. And having that sort of that email audience email capture, particularly with 6,000 people, I'm like, with 6,000 people, you can do lots of A/B testing and lots of engagement stuff. You can drive them to various places in the website on a frequent basis and remind them that they're there. And you can do pre-event stuff, you can do post-event stuff, you can do so much. Or even, depending on what platform you're using, turn your email newsletters into blog posts, or vice versa. You can automate, like you can go to town with automations and your website integrations, and reusing that content and repurposing it. Oh, I've lost you. I can't hear you.
Hang on a sec. Can you hear me now?
No, I can. Sorry, everyone. I don't know if that was just me.
No, that was me. I pressed the mute button. I tend to do it if I'm having a drink or something, so you don't have to hear me.
Oh, I should do that.
I mean, there's other things you could do. You could take a look. Obviously, if it's an event, I'm assuming that it's a historical event. It's already been going on for multiple years. So maybe something to do is to take a look at historical things that have happened there, sort of highlight and focus on previous winners. Take a look at the sort of the stables behind them, the breeders and things like that. Take a look at their sort of like their breeding line. So you can get, I'm just chucking terms out here that probably make no sense whatsoever. But their lineage then, for example, because I can imagine horse racing is very similar when it comes to the sort of the pedigree of the horses and the lineage to what you have where you've got like show dogs and things like that. So part of what makes them more expensive is because of their history, their breeding, who their father was, who the mother was, and stuff like that. So, I mean, maybe take a look back at things like that. So when you're kind of on the run-up then, for example, and you know who's going to be in that race or those races, look back at their lineage, look back at their history, and kind of focus on those kinds of things. Don't kind of just focus solely on the event. You want to build the excitement up. So, like, if it's just 3 months of the year, well, 2 months prior to that, you want to be building anticipation. So there's 5 months worth of content, the 3 months that is currently running, and the 2 months on the run-up to it. And then do things like the historical information prior to it. You look at the previous histories, previous winners, and kind of maybe look at things like that. It's just maybe being a little bit clever, look at the content and thinking, instead of sort of panicking about it, and this is a case for AI, if you ask me, is ask it. I do this all the time. If I'm struggling, I will literally go on to ChatGPT, for example, and I'll tell it what I'm looking to do. If there's relevance to a website, I'll put the website link in there so we can go and scrape it. Excuse me. And then I will tell it that I want a sort of series of questions or ideas, and then use that as a kind of just like a sounding board. You don't have to take its ideas as gold. You can just go, right, okay, I'm going to use this as a research partner. Same as if I'm sat in a pub, or like if me and Simon are having a chat, we'll just throw ideas back and forth. Well, if you don't have other people there that you can do that with, use AI. But be specific with what you want. Put links into, websites, wikis, Reddit groups and stuff like that all focus on the event and things. All this kind of stuff can give you information about it. And also, use deep research. Even if it means you've got to pay for something like ChatGPT for a month, it's $20. You can say $20 spent on that, and I can get 6 months worth of ideas with deep research to kind of really go in depth into the event or events, and just use that as a kind of starting point, as a sort of like a sounding board to get ideas. And you might be surprised that it gets your creative juices flowing, and you go, I've got a year's worth of content ready to go now, and now I just need to write it. I've got the ideas there, the timescales, and we're building that anticipation prior to the events.
It'd be a good website for a community as well.
Exactly. You're going to have lots of trainers, like-minded people that are involved in it, just the ancillary people that are involved in events like that. Never underestimate it. And again, if you've got Facebook groups or communities that already exist, see what people are talking about around that particular event.
Talk to your
gauge it.
customers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example of this. Yesterday morning, I was having a nose online, having my cuppa in the morning, having a look through, and there was a post on the admin bar about how do people handle when a client leaves them. So basically the end of things. So how do they handle things like the licenses and stuff like that? And a couple of people come back. Yeah, but a couple of people come back and said, oh, you need a good offboarding process. And I'm like, an offboarding process? Never thought of that.
No,
so I thought, okay, that's a cool idea. And I went away and wrote 2 of them. One for a standard, you finished the project, with a little bit of an upsell in there saying, like, if you don't want to do these things, then we can do it. You can go into a care maintenance plan.
Very nice.
And I've also got the EOS one, which is the end of service, which is perfectly apt for me at the moment because I'm winding down my hosting services and so on. And obviously licenses is part of it. So I've created 2 of those. I've styled them in the same style as my Essential Web Designers Documents Pack, and they'll be free later this week or next week. So you can just access those, download them, and use them as they are. But it's one of those things, just a comment in a thread got my creative juices flowing, and I spent a little bit of time, created 2 of those, and that'll be free for anybody that wants them.
Amazing.
Don't underestimate, you just need places you can go and get ideas. That's the thing. It's like, just get involved in places where you can get ideas from.
Did we answer both parts of that question, or just
I
one?
have no idea. I've lost track. I think, it's very hard to keep an email list updated because it revolves around the horse racing event, a single event. Well, I think we've talked about that. So hopefully, Richard, will kind of have some ideas there.
Yeah.
And how do you kind of you get next to no traffic on there? Well, this is where the email side of things helps you get the traffic. And as you already said, if you were you kind of put info out there that kind of go back to blog posts, then you get people to go to the website. But don't think that the website has to be generating huge amounts of interest. If your email list is generating interest, then this is a kind of key thing. Cool. So I'm glad we kind of talked about that, because there are, like I say, there are use cases where it makes a lot of sense to actually utilize AI as
100%.
As just someone you can throw ideas at. You can just get feedback from as a sounding board. It's probably got more information and help there than your average Joe has.
Yeah, and in terms of even efficiencies, so whenever I'm coding stuff, sometimes I'll sit there and I'll code it, and other times you're like, here's what I roughly want to do, go off and do it, and then it'll do it, and I'll be like, okay, and then either I have to tweak it a little bit, or it's pretty much good to go. Also a fun one for those is pitting off the different AIs against each other, which is very funny because yes, of course the prompt is very important, and I don't think that's going to change, but it is laughable sometimes whenever it comes to code, the difference between them. But what I have found, which is really interesting, we were talking about this earlier on, is depending on what your settings are for AI memories, so to speak, to remember your conversations, remember your projects and things like that there, those are very powerful. Mm-hmm. So particularly if you have created a project or artifacts or whatever you're using, and it can look through that history, and it can then, if you want to add a new feature or pull, so for example, one thing I did in my newsletter this week, I did a tutorial on my WordPress newsletter for making disappearing accordions in Elementor with some JavaScript. So I'll normally do that with Liquid in Shopify. But I couldn't be arsed creating a gist for it, so I just gave it to Claude and said, here's my JSON, here's my code, please create everything I need for a gist, and off it did, and did it for me. So, I already had the code pretty much, and just then asked it to do the gist, and then off I went, as opposed to sitting there doing all the markdown and remembering all that stuff, and I don't have to. Did it for me. That's a useful case.
I agree. It kind of leads us on. I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but there's been a few conversations about, and I was reading, which Toby Salami put up a blog post. I read it yesterday, which had a couple of interesting points in it about the whole sort of no coder versus coder, whether you should call yourself a developer, blah 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 blah. That whole sort of no code thing, and my take has always been the same, and that is, you can use a no code tool, and you can get results, but the problem with that is once you kind of go beyond, let's say, building a static website that doesn't require database connections and anything that kind of sensitive data, once you go beyond that and you start to implement those things, having an understanding of the underlying code, in my opinion, is vitally important. If you just rely upon prompting it and doing some basic checks, even if you're asking the AI to do a security audit on itself, well, it's written the code in the first place. So it's basically saying, well, this code is probably good. And if you say, right, audit it, go, oh yeah, there's a couple of issues there. That should already raise red flags. So like you were saying there, you'll use AI to speed up your process. But if you're used to coding, you can spot the issues in there. You can double check that code to make sure it is safe and secure and all the things you want it to do. What are your thoughts on that side of things?
Interesting. So yeah, I think, there was a very high profile Lovable case about these no code tools as well, where there was a very successful piece of software created on Lovable, but it went rogue. And it deleted the customer's database and everything overnight, and there was no backups.
Yeah.
Now, safe to say there are no backups in Lovable, and that has been dealt with and addressed, and they were able to actually recover it. So, there's those kind of issues there, as you're saying, about these no-code tools. But then whenever it comes to coding tools, you can be smart about what you do. So, for example, a couple of weeks ago, I was experimenting around with WooCommerce's new autocomplete experimental feature in 10.3, and I went off to Claude and said, here's the code base for this, here's the instructions, have a little read at that, and now here's what I want to do. But even then, there was nuances that came in that I knew I needed to get sorted. So that was very much a V1 and went with it, in time for the newsletter, but it wasn't working with the block checkout whenever it should by default out of the box by what it was doing. So, you need to look into that. Or then you have external issues whereby it turns out that Google was actually retiring one of its legacy APIs, but you can still use it. So if you use their new API, then you need to change the code up. So you need to be, as you say, you need to be context aware. And we have these no code tools, easy for me to say, or you can be a dev, or you can be a builder, which is kind of in between the two. And I think that to a certain extent, you need to not listen to the noise, because we do enough of putting each other down and putting people down. But you most definitely, if you're going to put something into production and you don't know anything about code and you have just got AI to do it, don't do that. Get somebody who can code to actually check it, particularly if it's involving people's data. So by all means, go for it. But if it's a production thing, you need to get that checked.
Yeah, it goes to the same thing. I mean, the argument, I think, or part of the argument that Toby was sort of coming up with was that you get the gatekeeping, which is, we don't want people to sort of say like, oh, you were this or you were that or you're pigeonholed. It's like,
I hate that.
They're all tools. And the sort of the whole concept of the article was abstraction, various different layers of abstraction. And even going down, like, say, WordPress is an abstraction from PHP.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's abstraction for anybody that kind of like thinking, what are you talking about? We're talking about layers that sit on top that make each layer makes it simpler. So if you say PHP, for example, if you know how to code in PHP and use MySQL and use JavaScript and those kinds of things, you could code something. But most people in their right mind would go, why would I want to do that when I could use a framework, for example? And your framework is one layer of abstraction away from the core code. And then you think, well, I don't want to do it on that route. I'll use WordPress. WordPress is another layer of abstraction. And then you use a page builder on top of it. It's another layer of abstraction. So it was an interesting article. And if I can find the link to it, I'll pop that in the sort of the show notes underneath, so anybody that's watching this on catch up can have a read of it.
Definitely.
But he had a very simple point there, which is basically, unless you are actually physically coding everything right down to the lowest level, we're talking like, getting stuck right into the core code on it, then everything is abstracted and it's just varying different degrees of abstraction. And therefore, you can't be snobbish about the fact that one person uses a framework and the next person uses WordPress. Neither of you are actually writing the code. And if you can understand the code, you've got a better chance you can use those abstraction layers because it's quicker. But if you need to get into the code and make a change to it, you can do. And this is the same argument I would say when it comes to no-code tools like Lovable, like Bolt and that. if you know the code and you're using these to enhance and speed up your workflow, but you can still check it, make changes, and you can correct it to make sure it is secure, you are getting the best of both worlds. Do you know what I mean? You're speeding up your process, but you're still doing your due diligence to make sure that whatever you put out there is safe and secure and isn't going to cause issues. So, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but it was an interesting point when I was talking about it.
It is good, and that's the thing. I mean, like the pigeonholing, because obviously we have, I am naming them because I do use them, and it's very frustrating. I don't use them exclusively, but it depends on the project or who you've inherited. We'll have sort of useful AI. So Elementor's AI is horrific, and they're AIing everything, and it's just terrible. Whereas you have, for example, Shopify and their AI called Sidekick, which is unbelievable. It's having your own little MCP self-hosted within the store. WooCommerce is working on those types of things as well. And the reason why those sort of AIs are coming in, and the personalized individual AIs that sit within that layer of abstraction, is because there are certain people that need them. They go, you say, look, I can't do this, but can you help me code this? Can you help me find something in here? Can you help load and create this page in bulk? So it's about, again, realizing sort of, as you say, that, AI can enable us to do things that we weren't able to do before, but we just have to kind of be safe with what we're doing. I think that's kind of what we were talking about the empowerment that AI can give us. I think that's what we were talking about.
It sounds good to me.
Yeah, there you go. Trying to bring it back, sorry.
Okay, well, I'm going to say I don't want to keep you all afternoon, so we've already gone over the hour side of things, which I tried to keep these
I didn't even notice.
I know, it flies by, see?
Yeah.
So, if anybody would like to find out more about you, the services you offer and so on, or to sign up to your 2 mailing lists.
2 newsletters, yeah.
2 newsletters, how can they do that?
You can, for email marketing and all things to do with that, it is all about email. So it's newsletter.allaboutemail.com. No, it's not. It's just all about email. And then LoopWP is the one about WooCommerce and WordPress, and it's newsletter.loopwp.com. Or you can look up on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, and LinkedIn for me, Simon Harper, and you will find me. And you can sign up through there. Or if you want one place to see everything, it's srhdesign.co.uk. And you can have a laugh at my really shit block editor website. And I'm sorry for, swearing at the very, very end. I did check whether I could do it or not, but I'm just going to be self-deprecating, because you can all go and hate on me. It's fine. I have been told by so many people, it's like, you code and build websites and do marketing design, and you have that as a website. You would be surprised how much it converts and sends referrals. It's very self-deprecating. I don't recommend it, but it is funny.
It's like a busman's holiday building your own website. It's the worst thing you ever do. I've struggled many, many, many times when I was sort of like running my agency business kind of thing, and it's like that was the worst thing you could do. You could spend all day building sites for clients, but building your own thing is like, I don't want to do this.
I can't be bothered. Yeah, no. And with EC 2026's version, I'm going to take the mess, something shocking.
Well, Simon, it's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully everybody that's been watching has got some value out of this conversation. And hit Simon up. Make sure, like you say, you follow him on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it these days, and sign up to his mailing lists, his newsletters. There's lots of really cool things in it, including links to my content, which is always a good thing.
Yes, all the time.
Yeah. And sometimes I get the top link. He's just gamified the entire thing. It's like,
yeah, I do.
I like it.
Gamify
it. Well, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon, Simon.
Thank
and I'm
you.
sure this won't be the last time. So
cool.
Have a fantastic afternoon, and I will see everybody soon. Take care. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and thank you, Simon.
Thank you.